the guy who was I guess he's the father of grape growing in Texas, is what we call him. His name was T.V. Munson, and he lived there in Denison. And T.V. Munson saved the entire French wine industry in the late 1800s. They have a statue erected of him over there. So when you think about that, so there was a phylloxera, which is an insect, that was a bacteria-carrying insect that was wiping out vineyards across France. And that was their main export in the late 1800s, was wine.
Welcome back to the Falls Homefront, where Wichita Falls leads in North Texas real estate, business, and life. I'm Tim Lockhart, and one of the things I enjoy most about this podcast is getting to spotlight people who are building something unique right here in North Texas. People creating experiences, businesses, and craftsmanship that make this region special. Today I'm joined by James Hanger, co-owner and winemaker at OG Cellars in Sunset, Texas. James took an interesting path into the wine industry, training in viticulture at Grayson College and apprenticing at local vineyards before stepping into the role of winemaker. At OG Cellars, they focus on traditional winemaking techniques like gravity flow and barrel fermentation to create wines with a smooth, balanced, and lingering finish. Today, we're talking about entrepreneurship, craftsmanship, the Texas wine industry, and what it really takes to build something meaningful from the ground up. James, glad to have you on the show.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me.
James, can you tell us how you got started in winemaking and about the Vineyard Sunset?
So I'm from Wichita Falls, gone off to college, moved to Dallas for a while. While I was down there, they have a thing called Restaurant Week. And Restaurant Week is when all the local restaurants that are really high-end restaurants have a price-fixed menu. And you can go and have, Del Frisco's or Bob's Steak and Chop House or something for $30 instead of $100. And anyway, so me and my friends would do that. And one place we were at that was the Mercury Grill, which was the Mikasina family's high-end steakhouse. I can't tell you what I ate that night, but I can still tell you the bottle of wine that I had. And it was just a downward spiral since then into the wine world. I became just engulfed in all things wine at that point. I wanted to know, I liked the way wine made me feel. I didn't recognize you could get that before, that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. And so I started just diving into the world of wine and drinking a lot of wine. But not just that, but the way my brain works is that I want to know why no Pinot Noirs are the same, why no Cabs are the same, why these wineries taste different, even if they happen to be side by side in geography. That's when I learned that it's not all just about the terroir, which is the soil, the weather, the sunlight, all of that goes into growing the grapes. But then once you have those grapes into your winery, the things, the tools that a winemaker can do to bring out different flavors and nuances out of the grapes. And that's what really got me going on wanting to learn more about wines. And several trips to California, got married out in a winery in Sonoma, met with a lot of winemakers, and I liked the ones that were more like me, more like here, that were small mom and pop wineries, whereas I could go and talk to the owner and the winemaker and really get a sense of what it is they do. And then I would go home and Google that person and read every interview like this or anything that person had done, and just to kind of get an understanding of what that was like. And so then I started making wines from kits at home and entered them into some non-commercial winemaking competitions and won gold medals. And decided I needed to go to college to get an education in case I have a wine that I need to fix one day. So they don't all turn out to be gold medal winning wines. I need to know what went wrong and why and how to fix that or prevent that in the future. So I enrolled in Grayson up in Sherman, Denison, and took classes there for a couple of years. All the classes they offered in both enology and viticulture, and then started my winery. I started making the wines. I found a harvest from a vineyard that had a contract with another winery. And so me and a friend of mine, she and her husband started Firelight Vineyards over in Valley View, we went and harvested that whole vineyard, the three of us. and started making wines out at a winemaking facility in Brownfield, Texas. And then after being there for 2 years, I built my tasting room here in Sunset and my wine facility here and moved all my stuff from there to here. And I've been running and gunning here ever since. And then in 2021, we opened up our first shop in downtown Wichita Falls. I guess I didn't say I went to Dallas and I moved home to Wichita Falls back in 2009. And out here in Sunset, which is an hour east of Wichita Falls, was my family's ranch. And so we built the winery out here and built the winery building and tasting room in 2016 with the wines that I had already started making from 2014 and 2015 vintages. And then in 2017, I planted my first vineyard here. And then, like I said, in 2021, we added the place in Wichita Falls, and it was downtown, and then that lease was up in January of this year. So we decided to move to Century Plaza and be closer to the heart of the city, especially in between Midwestern and Vernon College. And then with the mall development, when it's not a matter of if, it's when that will happen. It will happen. And we wanted to be in the middle of all that. We thought it was an exciting time to be over there, and so far our hunch has paid off. I mean, we are seeing a lot more traffic than what we used to see downtown, and people really enjoy the new space. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that new space that you have is nice. It's a lot larger, and it's kind of got more room to move around. The other one was a little bit tight.
Absolutely, yeah. And we loved our space downtown. Don't get me wrong. That Art Deco vibe that we had from being in the Holt Hotel building was awesome. We loved it. We carried it over into this new space as well. We gave downtown 5 years, and it's not there yet. It wasn't there yet. The business owner, I had to do what's right for my business. This new place is much bigger and a lot more space, a lot more people, and just a lot more, I guess it has a lot more ambiance, is what I would say. You walk in and you don't realize how big it is. Once you walk in the door, a tiny little shop, and then it opens up, and you're like, whoa.
Yes.
This place is huge.
Yeah, it's nice to have it decorated and everything.
But that's good.
Too, so that's good.
Thanks.
Yeah. What are the biggest myths about winemaking that you hear?
Well, it's not so much, I don't know if I would say myths about winemaking. It's probably just about misunderstandings of what goes into winemaking. Probably how I would categorize it. I use 100% Texas grapes. I use very organic methods in the way that we make our wines. I don't add harsh chemicals to our wines. I don't use animal byproducts when making our wines. And a lot of the stuff you buy at the store probably has a lot of that in it. Just because if you think about how mass-produced they are, you kind of have to have that in your production line. Whereas I'm a small boutique winery, and we don't. I mean, I have grapes. I have yeast nutrient, which is basically nitrogen. And then when I use racking instead of using chemicals for clarification. Racking is when you take the wine from one vessel and move it into another very gently, and leaving all the solids that have accumulated at the bottom, which is what makes it so cloudy. You leave them down there and go on to the next vessel, and it helps the wine clear up naturally and get bright without having to, because if you do it very hard, you stir all that stuff back up, and then your wine just stays cloudy forever, until you have to run it through some sorts of filtration systems. I use a very light, very small filter on my red wines. I don't want to strip flavor. The white wines, I do filter them absolutely, because you want to make sure that the wines are safe to drink. And white wines need more work than reds. But yeah, so I mean, one of the bigger myths is like, how do you get these flavors into the wines? And I tell people all the time, we don't infuse flavors into these wines. All the flavors that you taste from OG Cellars wines come 100% out of the grape itself. Different yeasts that I research and study all will have the effects that I want, which I want a yeast that's going to pull out not just the different flavors, but I want to have a strong mouthfeel. I want it to really coat your palate, and then I want it to have a linger on the finish. I don't want to have a wine that you take a sip of, and then 2 seconds later you can't even tell. It's like water, it's gone. I want the flavors to linger. And then all the flavors, once I find those yeasts, I dial it down by specific varietals, whether it's Cab or Syrah or Tempranillo or any of them, looking at what flavors I want to have enunciated to the forefront of your palate. And the only other flavor that we put in the wine that really doesn't come from the grape itself would be the oaky flavors, and that would come from the barrels. But that's probably the biggest one, is just like people like, no, you can do that. There are wineries that probably do. I know that wineries that do infused wines with certain flavors to desired effect. I don't happen to be one of those people. And it's just not the style of wine that I want to make. But that's the greatest thing I've learned about wine is
Yeah.
there's a palate for everything. And there's lots of people that just
Hmm.
want to drink dry reds. There's lots of people that want to drink whites. There's lots of people
Hmm.
that want to drink sweet wines. There's
Yeah.
people that enjoy both. And so it's a wide world of palate out there, and there's a wine for everybody. I had a guy come in the shop the other day, and he said, "I'm not here. I'm just here for her. I don't drink wine. I drink whiskey." And I said, "Well, let me let you taste this." And I let him taste a wine that I had
Hmm.
aged for 7 years
Hmm.
in oak barrels. And at that point, the barrels started having a caramelization effect, which kind of gives the flavor into the wine, kind of similar to what a whiskey would have with that same charcoal and
Hmm.
caramelization effect, but in a much smoother way. And because it's wine and not whiskey. And he was like, "Wow, I'll have a glass of that." And I said, "See, now you're a
That's
wine drinker."
great.
So yeah, so that's one of the bigger things. One of the other myths about wines that I find a lot is sulfites. For whatever reason, somebody put a scare into the American population 25, 30 years ago about
Right.
sulfites in wine. Sulfites are a natural byproduct of wine. You cannot make a wine without sulfites. It's a byproduct of the
Hmm.
fermentation process. There are so little sulfites in wine. There are more sulfites if you
Hmm.
have a can of Coke, like this one, or a can of green beans from
Uh-huh.
Del Monte Vegetables or something like that. It's supposed to, things to think about on your grocery store that are canned that have a shelf life of years and years. Wines, we put in our wines 40 to 50
Hmm.
parts per million. So if you want to look at the decimal point, you're talking 0.0000000, very
Uh-huh.
small amount of sulfites in one of these wines. And most people think, well, I can drink white wine, but I can't drink red wines because of all the sulfites. That's a misnomer because white wines have
Oh,
way more
really?
sulfites than reds. Yes, they do, because white wines are fermented off the skins. You press the
Hmm.
juice off and then you ferment it. Red wines, to get that color, you ferment on the skins. Well, when you ferment on the skins, it gives the wine a natural protection. So you don't have to add as many sulfites to a red wine as you do to a white. So whereas I said I might do 40 or 50 parts per million on a red, I might do 75
Hmm.
to 80 on a white. And so most people that I say, "Oh, I have a sulfite allergy," I say, most likely you have a tannin allergy. Because if you can drink white wines but can't drink red wines, you're definitely not
Hmm.
affected by sulfites.
Okay. We were talking a little bit about the techniques that you use. Can you tell us a little bit about the gravity flow, why you decided that over mechanical method?
Yeah, sure. The gentler you are on the wine, the better the wine will be because you're adding less oxygen to it. And oxygen is a
Hmm.
wine's enemy. Oxygen is what will turn your wine into vinegar over time. So the least amount of oxygen you can have exposure to oxygen you can have, the better the wine will be. So when you're moving wine from one vessel to another, you have choices. If you have enough high enough place where you can have it up high and gravity flow it down to low, that's pretty much ideal. It's slower, but it's still better for the wine. Another way you could do it is using inert gas like argon, where I have a tool where I can pump argon into a barrel. It pushes a light argon gas layer in, which is heavier than air, so it doesn't allow air in, and that pushes the wine out. And then a third way I could do it is using a pump. Now, a pump is going to use basically like a vacuum, and so there's going to be air involved. It's an air vacuum as you're pulling it through. That's going to be the harsher way of doing things. So we try not to do pumps at all. We try to use. I have forklifts so that I can lift things up high and gravity flow them down. If it's something that I can't use the forklift on, then I will use argon gas, but I won't use a pump when I'm moving the wine from one vessel to another. And that's just one way of doing things when you do gravity flow. You go to a lot of places, that are tiered onto a hillside when you think of a winery. And that's done on purpose to where the production starts at the top and then at each level it works its way down using gravity because that's the gentlest way on the wine and it's better for the wine that way. It's hard to find a big hill to build into here in North Texas. It is. So, like I said, I use a forklift and lift things up high to recreate it. Even when we're doing our bottling, I lift a tank and I'll put it 15 feet up in the air and we'll bottle using gravity flow to bottle into our bottling line. It's just easier on the wine than having to pump it. It takes longer. It'd be a much quicker
Hmm.
process if I use pumps, but I guess the proof is in the pudding. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
well, if it's better for the product, then that's That's good too. Yeah, speaking about the North Texas area and our climate, what makes this area good for growing wine?
Texas as a whole is a very great climate for growing wine. Texas being, as big as most of Europe, there's lots of diverse areas. North Texas, where we live, there are a lot of grapes that can grow here because we have a good degree growing days. We have a long summer. It kind of starts when most people are still having spring.
Hmm.
Our summer already begins. But depending if it gets too hot, you'll have an earlier harvest. So like the last couple summers have been ideal because they've been kind of mild
Hmm.
for Wichita Falls standards, not having the 30 days of triple digit
Yeah.
heat and stuff like that. Got up into the hundreds maybe once or twice last summer. That being said, you have to pick the right grapes for your site here in North Texas. So grapes that aren't heat tolerant are not going to do well here. So if you have a grape that's like a northern French grape, it's very hard to grow Cab up here. People do it, but it's very hard. It's very hard to grow Chardonnay, very hard to grow Pinot Noir. Those are thinner skinned grapes, the two of those, and they don't like the heat. But if you grow grapes that are from the south of France, that are from Spain, that are from Italy, those type of grapes, that Mediterranean climate is very similar to what we have here. If you've been in not on the coastline, but if you've been in the interior of Italy or Spain in the summertime, you're going to look around and be like, this looks like Texas, just no mesquite trees. But it's hot and it's dry. Now, North Texas does have its challenges that West Texas doesn't have. We have humidity, whereas out there they don't. And so fungal pressure can cause disease pressure on your grapes. And so you have to mitigate that by using a spray program. And there are different things you can spray. There are organic things you can spray, and there are things that are not organic that you can spray. Of course, the non-organics are probably going to be a lot more effective, but it depends on how you want to grow vines in your vineyard. But yeah, so here in North Texas, the other difference between here and West Texas, where 85% of the grapes in the state are grown out in the brownfield Lubbock area. And there's a reason for that. It's not because their soil is so much better than ours. It's because of their dry climate. Humidity is one thing. But the other thing is they have a desert climate. Out there, it could get up to 100 degrees in July or August, but at night, it'll get down to 65 or 70. That gives the grapes a good cooling off period. Whereas up here, it just gets dark. We'll be lucky if it gets down to 90 degrees on a July or August night. So that means the grapes are going to ripen a lot quicker up here because you don't have that diurnal switch and temperature fluctuation. So that being said, you want to make sure you plant the right grapes that you can get, because a longer growing season typically makes for a more complex wine in the grape because it allows different flavors to ripen at the very end. Whereas if it just gets hot and all your sugars get there, but the grape hasn't had time to catch up. And a lot of times you'll lose your acid like that. So we do like it here in North Texas when it is a more mild summer. We like early rains, like right now. We don't like late rains. So when you get those rains in August that come, where everybody else is like, oh, relief from the heat. Us wine growers, we're like, no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Harm our harvest. And so we're the only farmers that gets close to harvest that don't want to rain.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of crazy for some people to imagine, but yeah. So great. The guy who was I guess he's the father of grape growing in Texas is what we call him. His name was T.V. Munson. Lived there in Denison. And T.V. Munson saved the entire French wine industry in the late 1800s. They have a statue erected of him over there. So when you think about that, so there was a phylloxera, which is an insect that was a bacteria-carrying insect that was wiping out vineyards across France, and that was their main export in the late 1800s was wine. They were the world power on wine in the late 1800s. And for somehow, you got to think about the late 1880s that word got to a grape grower in Denison, Texas. So there's this late 1800s. You're thinking telegrams, not necessarily Alexander Graham Bell telephones. Got word to this man in North Texas that the French was losing their wine industry, and somebody had given him enough information that he was able to say, I know what that phylloxera bug is, and I have a stock that is resistant to it. And then he went out to his own vineyard and took thousands of cuttings from his vine, had to basically take each one of those cuttings and dip them in hot candle wax to seal each end, so that way the vine would go dormant without drying out and dying. Put them on a covered wagon take them to the DFW
Yeah.
area, the Dallas or Fort Worth, put them on a train from there to Galveston, and then have those steamed for months across the Gulf and the Atlantic
Yeah.
to get over to France. And for someone over there to believe that a guy from a town in Texas that they had never heard of knew what he was talking about. But he did. And it saved their entire wine industry. So I like to tease people from France that say, we saved your butt 3 times. The wine industry, as well as 2 world wars. You can't have a French wine without having a little bit of Texas in it, because all those rootstocks that were saved from that is what saved those vineyards. And they still have a lot of those vineyards today have 100-year-old rootstocks and stuff like that, or they have rootstocks that were propagated from that original rootstock to make sure that they are disease resistant. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, just right here in this
Yeah.
area. That's
No one would think that happened. That was a North Texas man
right.
in the late 1800s saved the French wine industry. They have a museum for him there in
Yeah.
Grayson, or in Denison. It's called the TV Munson
Oh, that's
Museum.
great.
And pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the tasting room that you have here in Wichita Falls. What gave you the idea to do that and bring like the live music that you bring on the weekends and everything? How did that come about?
Yeah, we wanted a place a little closer. We live in Wichita Falls. And like I said, the ranch is 55 minutes east. So I wanted a second location where basically when COVID happened and everything was shut down and people were afraid when business started opening back up, people were still, they were itching to get out of their homes, but they were timid. They were scared to go places. And one thing that we realized was that we're a destination out here. And we needed to have a place that was more easily accessible for people. And so that's why we said, well, we live back in Wichita Falls. Let's put one in Wichita Falls. And so with this new shop, we wanted to have a place where not you just go and drink and taste wine and learn about wines, because that's what you can do at a tasting room, is you come and you can taste different wines. And that way you can just have small sips of each one and figure out what wine you like without being intimidated by wines, by saying, I don't know what I like about wines. I'm not sure if I like wine. I don't know how to drink wine. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. And because it's not something you grew up with, since, like most alcohol, you have to be 21. You have to be an adult before you really supposed to start drinking it. And so with that being said, most people, it's not something you were learned as a child with the rest of your education, your upbringing. You could be in a setting where you're prim and proper growing up and you've got your table set and you've got your certain forks with certain knives for certain dishes and all this stuff. But until you're really of age, you don't really get into wine. And so a lot of people are intimidated. So we wanted to make a fun, inviting atmosphere where people can come and learn about wines, and I help try to train my staff to where they're knowledgeable to be able to just teach you about wine and not just pour something and say, here you go. So I train them as well to not just talk about grape growing and wines, but our process. And if you come into the tasting room there, you'll see on one of the walls, I have these huge photos that we had blown up and put on canvas of different parts of our winemaking process, which I tell people all the time. If you ever want to volunteer to come out during harvest season and we help make wines, and we'll be glad to have you. Because it takes a village. It's not just me all the time. I do require help from time to time. But so we wanted to have this nice place. And with a nice wine, I started thinking about the things you experience or see in the movies or read about with people when they're in France or Spain or Italy and you're in these little tiny towns and villages, and how, the wine just flowed and everybody was friendly and there was a musician in the corner. Food was fantastic. And that's what we wanted to kind of recreate right here. One thing that we wanted to make ourselves different was when we were downtown, we started thinking about this stuff. We were surrounded by pizzerias, which we have a pizzeria at the winery here in Sunset, where I'm at. Right now, I have a wood-fired pizzeria, very similar to what, if you were familiar with what Ancient Ovens used to be like when it was open St. Joe. I built it to do what they kind of did. I wanted to have pizzas with our wines. And when we thought about it in Wichita Falls, I didn't really have room to do a pizzeria unless I wanted to add on outside to that building. But B, there were so many pizza options downtown. There was at least 3 or 4 places around downtown within a 3-block radius that had pizza. And so we were like, well, let's do a different cuisine. Let's look at something different. And we decided to go way different. We went with something that most Wichita Falls folks hadn't had before, which are tapas. And tapas, when you go to Spain, you go to a tapas bar. And the tapas are They're small. They're larger than appetizers, but yet smaller than entrees. But they're not meant to be eaten by just one person. And don't get me wrong, if you're hungry and you're by yourself, by all means, come in and grab a plate of tapas. But the point of tapas and the wines is to come inside and enjoy food with friends. Kind of like I equate it to like a Super Bowl party, where you just kind
Yeah.
of put out a spread and people just grab a little bit off of each thing, and you just kind of and you're eating while you're drinking and you're talking, the music's playing, and you're having a good time. And that's the vibe we wanted to create there. And with tapas, it really does work for us very well. And tapas are mostly just small plates like that, and you can sit there and order one or two of them. And I mean, some of our plates are very large, like our charcuterie boards and stuff. And a charcuterie board can really fill you up. So so we got a little bit of everything there, and lots of different flavors of foods and dishes. And the cool thing about them is you can pair the wines with the different ones. And like I said, with everybody's palate being different, there's no one wine that's going to go with just that one palate. It's just like, okay, I'm looking for something sweeter because that dish is saltier, or I'm looking for something a little bolder because that one over there doesn't have that boldness to it. And when you pair food and wine, and you can really create some great flavors on your palate, it's a great experience.
So thanks for bringing that here to Wichita Falls. It's a great experience going in there. Could you tell us a little bit about the brand that you have with the OG name and how that came about?
Yeah. So we were trying to figure out a good name for the winery, and the year we started the winery was the same year my daughter was born, and she just turned 12. And so in 2014, that was our very first vintage. And so I kept coming back to different, going through all these different names, looking up to see if there was other wineries that already had this great name that I thought of or something like that. And I kept coming back to just OG for my daughter's name is Olivia Grace. And so the winery was originally named for her. And then 4 years later, we had our second child. We had our son, and his name is Grayson Oliver. So I have an O and a G either way you look at it. And I've got Olivia Grace and Grayson Oliver. So so that's how we came out of the OG. And then I always like to tell people that she's my original and he's my gangster. Just the things that 8-year-olds boys get into. And so but that's how the name OG Cellars came about, and wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and so as the region continues to grow, and where do you see the North Texas wine scene heading in the next few years? And what advice do you give a newcomer or family looking to embrace and experience the lifestyle here in North Texas?
Yeah, the North Texas wine scene is growing like crazy. When I first started in 2014, there was maybe 25, 30 wineries from DFW up to the Red River. And now there's closer to 100. Yeah, there's a lot of wineries in North Texas, and there's more that are coming all the time because people are finding out that, wow, we can grow really good grapes and make excellent wines here in North Texas. Our wines alone have won medals, I mean, golds, bronze, and silvers all across the board at San Francisco competitions, at Texom, and other really prestigious wine competitions against the California wines. I mean, just going up there, going toe to toe with them. I had a Tempranillo a few years ago in San Francisco with one gold. They only awarded 10 golds to Tempranillos across the whole competition, and 7 of them came from Spain, where Tempranillo's from. So that was a pretty high honor. Well, people used to think Texas was only good for sweet wines, the little jug wines you'd find on the bottom shelf at the grocery store, and that's just not. It's kind of cool. We have burgeoned so much that we are now the number 4 or 5, depending on who you look at, grape growing state in the country. The Texas wine industry alone is a several billion-dollar industry for the state of Texas. And so we have here in North Texas, I'm part of the North Texas Winery Association. I'm a past president of it. And so there's lots of really cool things. During the month of May right now, we're doing a wine trail. You can go to northtexaswine.com. You can sign up for there, but for, I think it's $45 or $50, you can go do tastings at over 42 different wineries in the North Texas area, in this area, that are all within less than 2 hours of Wichita Falls. So easy day trips. If you want to go hit 2 or 3 in a day and come back, you might want to make sure you have a designated driver. It is wine. But most places, as you know, we're responsible adults. You go there and you don't just have the wine. You order a small cheese tray or food option, whatever they have. And just like if you were going to a restaurant in town and having a drink with your meal. But yeah, I mean, that's an easy deal. You can go to, like I said, NorthTexasWine.com, because normally a wine tasting might cost anywhere from $12 to $25 per
Mm-hmm.
tasting at each winery. And it might be 3 or 4 or 5 wines that you're tasting for that money. Every winery is, they control their own
Right.
pricing and how they set it up. But for the North Texas Wine Trail, you'll get at least 3 if not 4 tastings at every winery for that $45 or $50, and it goes on for the whole month. So you don't have to just say, "Oh, I can only go do it once." You might
Yeah.
spend 2 or 3 days during the month. I'm going to go try some different wines, and so it's a huge thing going on here in North Texas. And then in the Wichita Falls area, we're blessed that we've got
Mm-hmm.
4 tasting rooms, and all of us have different styles
Mm-hmm.
of types of wine. Nobody's wines are the same. People sometimes will say things to me like, "Oh, I've had that wine before." I'm like, "Well, if you haven't had that wine
Mm-hmm.
from that winery, then you haven't had
Mm-hmm.
that wine before." That's like kind of thing. I've never been to Whataburger, but I've been to McDonald's, and totally
Right.
different tasting burger, totally different thing. So wine's very similar in that way. It all depends on the winemaker. You can get grapes. 2 wineries can get grapes from the exact same vineyard and produce 2 totally different
Mm.
tasting wines. That's something that
Yeah.
that's up to each winemaker on how they design their wine. But so yeah, so it's really interesting now, especially I see it up here in Sunset a lot more than Wichita Falls, but the Wichita Falls area is great, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just the growth since post COVID of people saying, I don't want to live in the
Mm-hmm.
Metroplex anymore. I don't want to deal with traffic. I want a smaller pace, slower pace, but I still want a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
conveniences of a bigger city. And so that's what's one thing that's going to bring Wichita Falls, I think, a lot more
Mm-hmm.
people as well. And we like part of that, especially around right where we're located now. There are 8 hotels within less than a mile of where we are. And so when people come for events at Midwestern or Vernon or the mall or the museum or the Hotter Hell or anything else, and they're looking at Wichita Falls going, wow, this is a great little town here. And it has, I mean, I always tell people, we feel like
Mm-hmm.
we're a little town, but we're 100,000. We're like a Richardson or a Garland or a Plano without the
Right.
rest of the Metroplex. We've got a
Mm-hmm.
lot to offer here, and with our airport having stuff where you can fly in and fly out, or at least fly
Mm-hmm.
to Dallas and catch a plane somewhere else, going elsewhere. So yeah, so we wanted to make sure we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be a part of that and the growth. We felt being the new location
Yeah.
over off Maplewood positioned us better to help do that more.
Well, that's great, James. Thanks for coming to the show today. I truly appreciate what you're doing and enjoy hearing stories behind the people that are mastering their craft and bringing something very unique, here in North Texas. For listeners who want to learn more about the OG Cellars or visit the winery, try the wines, or connect with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Through the website or our email, ogsellars.com. We're also on Facebook, OG Cellars on the Plaza, and I think it's o.g.cellars on the Plaza
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram, social media users like that. We're in Century Plaza, like I was saying, kind of over in, next to, let's see who's by us. Black Sheep is by us.
Mm-hmm.
Fosmo's is by us. We're in the building in front of you, so
Mm-hmm.
facing the old mall. We're on that side of the street there, and we have a little bit of everything. We don't serve beer. We can't sell beer. But we do have specialty cocktails. So if you're not just a wine drinker, we also have hard
Mm-hmm.
ciders on tap, and we do a lot of frozen drinks like margaritas and Bellinis and pina coladas and stuff like that. So we have a little bit of a little more to offer than just wine. So if people say, "Well, I don't drink wine," well, come on in, try us out, and I guarantee you'll have fun. You'll have a good time. It's a lot of fun in there. We're open Tuesday through Saturdays. We open at 4 o'clock each day, and we're open till 9 on the weeknights until Friday night and Saturday night. We're stay
Mm-hmm.
open till 11. We have live music. If you're looking for something to do on a Tuesday night, we do charity bingo. We pick a different local charity every single month and do bingo to raise money for for that
Mm-hmm.
individual charity. And that starts at 7 o'clock. We do it's from 7 to 9. It only costs $10, and your whole $10
Mm-hmm.
goes to the charity. So it's a great way to give back. I think last year we gave back something like $15,000 to local charities that wasn't part
Nice.
of their budget. So every one of them, they loved that. And then Wednesday nights we have ladies' night, and sometimes we'll do little pop-up boutiques in there with little boutique stores. Ladies' nights, 10% off all drinks and food and every merchandise, whatever. And then Thursday nights happy hour all night long. We do happy hour, $3 off
Mm-hmm.
all glasses of wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so lots of reasons to come see us And Friday and Saturday night, we like to have fun music, whether it's a live band or we doing last Saturday, we started doing a karaoke. And I think we have that scheduled a few more times over the next couple months. But you just got to look at our events are written on the website.com. And or you can look at it on social media as well. And like I said, you can email me at James at OG Cellars or just at info at OG Cellars. We'll be glad to respond to any questions anybody ever has.
Okay, that's great. That's a lot of great ways to connect with you or just to know when to stop on by. Yeah. So for those listening, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with someone who may appreciate entrepreneurship, local business, or just enjoy great Texas wine. Thanks for tuning in to the Falls Homefront, and we'll see you on the next one. Appreciate you tuning in. Want more insider tips on buying, selling, and investing in Wichita Falls and North Texas? Subscribe now and keep watching. Your next move starts here.